Diamondvale, Shattered Memories. By Eric Hua. Chapter 14. Geode-Mutants. Just outside the Amazon's tribe, Dante, Sarman and Liam were each locked into a cage. Not a fan of being confined, Liam began making a ruckus on the metal bars. He begged the Amazonians to let him out as he had done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, Dante was assessing the situation and figured out that they were now in the Amazon borderlands. Suddenly, Sarman began to act wildly in his tiny cage. He was letting out a monkey cry that was very difficult to ignore. Dante was very annoyed, but Liam grew worried as Sarman only made that noise when he sensed danger was near. Shortly after, cries could be heard from some of the warriors. Their soldiers were falling in battle, but the guard refused to free the prisoners. The Amazonians were a proud race that stuck to their convictions. The enemy had entered the prison grounds. They were creatures that stood on two legs with crystals infused through their entire body. Their face could hardly be seen, and instead of hands, they had sharp crystal blades. Liam was scared and wondered what the abominations were. Dante identified them as Geode-Mutants, mindless creatures that have lost their sanity, but because of it, have no understanding of pain or their limitations. Standing between the prisoners and the Geode-Mutants was a small group of warriors. Together the warriors yelled their war cry and ran into battle. They looked to have the advantage early as the Geode-Mutants seemed slow and couldn't dodge a single attack. However, everything Dante said was true. Despite taking those initial hits, the Geode-Mutants continued to fight. Slowly, the Geode-Mutants overpowered the Amazon fighters who had exhausted their energy. 3 were lying on the ground, and there was one warrior who could only lift her head and watch as her sisters-in-arms were about to suffer a terrible fate. Liam yelled to get her attention, and she turned to look at him. He was shouting for her to open their cages so they could help her allies. With haste, she lunged forward and attacked one of the Geode-Mutants that was about to attack her ally. She then grabbed the keys from her ally's belt and threw them towards Liam's cage. The keys were high up in the air and Liam could see them heading towards him, but they flew over his hands and landed away from Liam's range. The warrior attempted to retrieve the key, but one of the Geode-Mutants tripped her. The Amazon warrior was about to be struck by the creature. Thankfully, a robotic arm appeared to intercept the attack. Dante had broken out of his cage and he grabbed the monster's arm and threw it as far as he could. While this was happening, the key that was out of Liam's range was close enough for Sarman's tail to reach. Once he got the key, he unlocked his cage and then quickly helped free Liam. Dante and the warrior both saw the pirate and the monkey flee from the battlefield. They thought of them as cowards, but Dante had no time to deal with them. He was focused on saving the other 3 Amazonians. He attempted to use his sonic cannon blast on one of the Geode-Mutants. It made contact with his foe, but it merely got up, ignoring the pain. Dante switched tactics. He used his thrusters to get close to one of the creatures and then grabbed its arm. Then he began swinging the creature in circles before letting go and flinging his enemy at the other 2 Geode-Mutants that were about to attack the Amazonian warriors. Dante had successfully repelled the enemy attack from the prison grounds. The warrior who saw all this happen was grateful for what he had done. She was about to thank him, but Dante's sensors were detecting something approaching. Looking further out, more Geode-Mutants slowly entered the forest. Even the 3 that Dante took care of had gotten back up. Dante braced himself for another battle, but his systems were already warning him to not exert too much power, as he still hadn't fully recovered from his battle with Sarman. Dante remained standing to protect the Amazonians, and he refused to run away. He was about to be overwhelmed by the vast number of Geode-Mutants, but a banana peel was thrown onto one of the creature's heads, and they all turned to the culprit. The monkey mocked the Geode-Mutants and their focus immediately shifted to him. Slowly they made their way towards the furball that insulted them. The Geode-Mutants followed Sarman away from the prison and into the forest, where they lost sight of the monkey. They looked around, but all they could see were trees in the surroundings and a rope beneath their feet. Liam pulled the rope from a tree he was sitting atop. The rope tightened and wrapped around all the mutants' legs. When Liam gave the signal, Sarman transformed into his gorilla form and tackled all the Geode-Mutants that were tied together. They were knocked down into a deep pit that him and Liam had dug. At the top of the ditch, Liam laid down some blasting jelly to trigger a mudslide to collapse on the mutants. There was only one problem: Liam couldn't find a match. The Geode-Mutants were beginning to untangle themselves out of their predicament. Thankfully, Dante followed Saman when he lured the Geode-Mutants. Using his cannon, he fired it at the blasting jelly, causing a chain reaction, collapsing the soil onto the creatures and burying them. Liam fell to the ground from the stress and Dante extended his arm to help him. Liam accepted Dante's help, and as he pulled the pirate back up, they both had a memory appear in their heads. They somehow shared a memory where they were fighting together against a powerful foe. The location wasn't familiar, but they could recognize each other's faces. They were about to speak with each other, but their conversation would be interrupted as they heard a wailing sound echoing through the forest. It was coming from the Amazon tribe, where Myla was. While all the warriors were battling to keep the borderlands protected, the queen was nowhere to be found on the front line. Instead, she was wearing a cowl robe to hide herself from everyone. She snuck into a secluded area where it was just her and a horse. The horse was about to make a noise, but the queen lowered her hood for a moment to calm her steed. When the horse settled, she was ready to hop on, but before she could, she had a feeling someone was near. She pulled a sword that was kept by the harness of the horse and held it out to defend herself. Appearing before her was someone she wasn't expecting to see: Rice. She lowered her guard as he was wondering why the legendary queen of the Amazonians isn't fighting alongside her people. The queen looked down in despair, telling Rice, that person no longer exists. Rice knew the queen was being blackmailed by someone, and she was scared. He told her not to give in to despair as there was still hope. Rice was referring to his students, but the queen still had doubts about them. They were young and far too inexperienced to defeat the enemy. Rice agreed, but he also explained that was why he was here to see her. He was asking for her help to guide the students. She stood for a moment, struggling to figure out her decision.